his life. Kids don't know where I'm going, I could be overseas, gone to rehab for Christmas, down on my knees.
How are you feeling about the record and putting it out in this environment?
Well, it's unusual. It's there's certain things out of my control. Certain decisions have been made that have made it difficult to promote the record properly.
Right.
But I mean, I'm confident in the record as a piece within it, you know, just as a record, and I hope people can hear the record for what it is, you know. It's just music, you know, in a some music is some songs, and you can listen to it if you like.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any great sort of. We had plans for a lot of video stuff, but
right.
we can't get a crew together or anything, and you know, we had planned to perform the record with the orchestra.
Right, I can see why.
Recital halls and stuff, and we can't do that right now, so postponing that. So, you know, it might just be one of those weird things where it's just a record that was made, a document of the times, and then we move on and we do something else.
It reminds me, I ran into Kirin the other day, Kirin J Callinan. He was
he's in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I spoke to him yesterday.
Oh, how's he doing? Is he still here or is he there?
He's still there. He's living up in Piha.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone's gifted him a holiday house up there, and
nice one.
He's just riding out the apocalypse.
I ran into him at the wine cellar and forced him to have his photo taken with me.
Oh yeah. Oh good. I'm sure he obliged. You wouldn't have to.
He did indeed. Yes. He was hanging out with one of the Finn brothers, the Elroy ones.
Elroy, yeah, they're close.
Yeah. So we should talk about the record. It's called Hijack. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Why is it called Hijack? Correct. What are we hijacking?
I just thought it was funny. I mean, a lot of it sort of stemmed from a weird persona thing where I think people call me Jack a lot, and even though I let people know what my real name is,
right? Well, it's tough. It's from my perspective. You never know what to call people when they have 2 or 3 persona.
Well, if I sign off an email and I say, you know, my name's Tim,
and
then people write back, and they write back, you know, they respond and they're like, "Hi, Jack," and I'm just like, you didn't even read the email.
Right.
And, you know, I've had a lot of personal crisis over this sort of whole persona thing, and what it really means and what it is, and how it's separate from who I am as a person. And I don't know, the hijack thing's more, you know, taking responsibility and control of your life.
Right.
You know, I think to me it became about hijacking myself.
Right.
That I had become overrun by other people's ideas of who I was, and you know, I sort of got caught up in looking at myself from the outside, and sort of monitoring myself by the way other people thought about me. So I think it's just a sort of reclaiming of myself.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was kind of wondering, because I read the little blurb that I got about the record, and it said you'd been through some bushfires and breakdowns and a long hospital stay, and I'm thinking, well, is that what we want to talk about? That's your personal life as opposed to your, you know, persona. And so how would you like to proceed?
Well, we could talk about the music.
That would be good.
Interesting thing. The press release is just a press release, you know. I read, you write those things and those things happen, and you're like, yeah, sure. But looking back, I don't know how much truth is in that. You know,
gotcha.
There were fires. There were. I went to a hospital. You know, but you know, the music sort of is more interesting. Okay,
let's talk about the music then. Well, the first thing about the music is the strings. because you've got a guy named Sam Lipman who's done your string arrangements. He's based in Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, he's an Australian guy. He teaches orchestration at the University of Texas. And he grew up next to Laurence, who's my drummer and co-produced the record with me.
Right.
So they're like childhood friends. And the string thing it was not something that I'd intended to do. I just had this keyboard that I wrote all the songs on, because normally I have a method for like how I'm going to write something. And each record I've done, it's been like, I found like a piece of equipment and I've just done everything with that. And then you like make the record and it's just a diving board. But I had this keyboard that I was sort of gifted by Donny, who plays in the band.
Yeah.
And he got it from this New Zealand jazz musician, Mike Knock. And so it's like Mike Knock's 90s kind of new age keyboard.
Right.
And I just I wrote all the songs on guitar, but then I just said that I would just use this keyboard and all the sounds in it to write the music. And a lot of the sounds I ended up using were the string sounds, and I just thought, I love the like Flaming Lips, like Soft Bulletin,
right,
and those like Mercury Rev, Deserted songs. Those were big records for me like 20 years ago.
Yep. It's amazing. It's 20 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah. And I found myself sort of returning to that stuff, and it's kind of comes out of that like John Lennon, like Plastic Ono Band and Harry Nilsson, Pussycats, and that sort of era of like songwriter stuff, but like heavy emotion. And I thought that maybe I would just, re-amp the keyboards or record them all on an 8-track on different layers and do this sort of stuff. But ultimately the best thing to do and the only way to move forward and make the record as good as it could be was to get an arranger to arrange the strings.
Right.
And he was the guy that was there to do
it. Yep. So how did it work? You pretty much had the tracks done, sent them to him, and he wrote around it?
Well, yeah, I had the tracks sort of demoed, and the tracks didn't really change dramatically from the demos. We kind of just built on top of them. So I had that, and then he sort of worked off my ideas and improved them and sent them back. But, stuff that he was doing just adds so much sort of emotional complexity to the music that would have otherwise just not been available, not within my understanding or knowledge of how to create music like that. There's something else that happens. And when you hear the strings back, it does have this sensation of like, when Little Richard died last year, and I was listening to Little Richard's gospel recordings just through my phone speaker, and you feel the power of it translate through a phone speaker. You don't need to play it on a huge system. It's just like the spirit of Little Richard is there, and like great music has that. And when you're doing demos and you're using crappy keyboards and stuff, and you're like, I'm not really feeling the spirit of the music coming through.
Gotcha.
And then you get like a 16-part sort of string arrangement recorded beautifully, and you slip it into the session, and suddenly you feel everything again.
Right.
And you're like hearing actual music and instruments vibrating and air and the actual emotional gravity of the music was finally coming through. And that was a really special thing for me to feel, because I've never done that before,
Right.
Use like a cello or something on, it's never been like proper orchestration.
Right. So at that point, were your vocals done, or did you do your vocals after you heard the orchestra?
I did the vocals really quickly. We recorded everything in Sydney in a studio here, and I did like 3 passes to tape, and then just picked one and then maybe comped a little bit, but I didn't spend a lot of time on the vocals because I just knew how the songs went. And they just
That helps.
I basically sung the song the same way 3 times, and it was just like, okay, well, that's how it goes.
Yep.
And that, you know, that was good for me too, because I think previously I ended up in a couple of you know, the last 2 records, a lot of vocal comping and stuff, and I don't think it necessarily makes the music better.
Gotcha.
You know, we worked really quickly in the studio. It was probably the easiest record I've ever made.
Really?
And the most complex. It's sort of, you know, I think I just let people help me more than I'd let people help me before.
Oh, so what was it like in the studio? Did you have others in with you? Were you kind of isolated in the studio, or how did it work?
Was mainly just Laurence and I,
right,
in the studio for a week, and with the engineer, and Donny came in and played bass one day, and that was really it. Laurence played drums, and I played the piano and the keyboards and guitars and stuff. And
right.
Laurence played some piano. We were just tag teaming, the 2 of us. And then, you know, I did a bit of editing at home, but it was very simple like that. You know, I think I had a pretty good map.
Right.
A lot of the fun stuff in the studio is sort of like reamping the shitty kind of keyboard sounds that I'd made at home.
Right.
Through like Leslie cabinets and stuff in the studio. So then you're giving them all this extra dimension.
Yeah.
A lot of the sounds in the record come from that sort of process.
Now, I know that your album from 10 years ago has just been reissued as well. And I'm wondering if that bears, do you think about what you've done in the past? Like does that stuff have anything to do with what you're doing now?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was more of a return to that, if anything.
Right.
Because I think after I made that record, there was things I was trying to do on that, and it also came, you know, it's probably just a life cycle thing. Like once every 10 years,
right,
some shit goes down.
Yep.
And you have to process it, and you know, this is making music's just the way I process things. And I guess at the Hertzfeld time, I was probably like 28.
Right.
No, what was I? Yeah, 27, 28 when that came out, and it was, you know, very traumatic time for me. And
gotcha.
You know, and now I spent the last 3 years or so on tour not making music, really, just sitting in vans and hanging out with people. And so finally being allowed to sit at home and sort of let some of that come out. You know, there's probably a lot of build up. But I think Hertzfeld had a sort of sense of this like big icebreaker kind of moving along. And that's probably when I make my best music, is when I'm just in that position.
Plowing through.
Just plowing through. And I think this record has a sense of that. And, you know, in a sort of cinematic scale to it. It's not, the last record I made was more just like really scattershot, reaching for things and being quite willfully difficult and choosing bad sounds, making it quite ugly album, intentionally, because I was, you know, very self-destructive, trying to burn everything down. Whereas this record is more about trying to do something gracefully and make something beautiful and lasting.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cinematic, I see there's a video for the opening track, Astronaut.
All day I think about what I'm gonna do when I get out. Who am I gonna be when I get free? Who am I gonna be?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's fun. Well, Kirin did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the video, I found it really daunting, the idea, and, you know, my friend that was going to make some videos for the record, we were kind of like, the record scale of it and is so huge. in a way, and in the sense of cinema. If you're going to make a video, it's kind of got to live up to that. Otherwise, it's going to sort of reduce the idea of the music, you know. And it's we were going to do a video for that, and Kirin just bought a spacesuit from some costume shop, and then he
of course
followed his girlfriend on a job somewhere, and ended up in a space dome surrounded with camera people. And he's sending me snippets on his phone, and I was like, "What are you making the video?" And he's like, "I think I am. I think I'm making the video." I was like, "Okay, go ahead, make the video." I mean, I just felt, and it's hard because as much as I love cinema and I love music videos, I don't know that I have much objectivity in how to make them for myself.
Sure. Yeah. Nothing wrong with a little outside influence and a third view on things.
I was very grateful for Kirin to do that, you know, and I do like the video. You know, it's just on the threshold of what's acceptable. You know, in terms of fidelity. And I think because it's not aspiring to be, you know, a high definition kind of cinematic thing, it has a nice contrast with the music.
Right.
But I would hate to make a video that sort of aimed for something close to the music and failed.
Right. That
would make it hard for me to listen to the music again. So I'm kind of relying. It's a real leap of faith, but I'm hoping that people will be able to listen to the record and not have to attach something too many visuals to it.
Right. I mean, a lot of the songs are they sound to me like they're very personal. You know, things like American Smile and and The Giver. And so what do you, I'm sure they're different to you than what you might imagine that somebody who's listening to them would get out of them. Do you think about that in terms of what the listener is going to glean from listening to?
I mean, they're pretty universal themes. I mean, they're personal to me, but I don't really think that they would necessarily, anyone would understand why I wrote what I wrote.
Right.
I wouldn't expect anyone to. I wouldn't even want anyone to know why I wrote the songs.
Right.
You know, it's real. They're really, they're quite self-explanatory, I think.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
And they deal in like the song like The Giver. It's kind of just like a blues sort of mentality.
I give away my songs, I give away my face, I give away my dignity, then I am replaced. I give away my house, I give away my child, I give away my wife, now I'm living in the wild.
But it's sort of loaded with all my own personal stuff, and you know, becomes a bit of a character portrayal,
right?
Or character assassination. You know, why do it's just, you know, that's a weird existential question. Like, why do people even listen to songs? Like,
well, there is.
Not to me, I'm going to get out anything. I just, you know, the songs to me are you know, are deeply personal. Maybe more so than ever.
Right.
Because you know, I just had a great sense of clarity and openness when I was writing them, and I felt like it was all just making sense, and I was just channeling what had happened over the previous however many years, and it luckily all came out at the right time. Because now I think, like, could I make this record like now, like a year later? And I just don't have that now, you know. Everything's
well,
changed.
It's interesting. I've been talking to a lot of people and asking them about how they are now compared to they were a year later, because everybody's been going through a whole lot anyway. So it's like, well, are you the same person? Can you be doing the same thing? And most people are dealing with music that they made a year ago. So it's kind of strange.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky because I'd been on tour for ages, and then I had this break before the pandemic happened, and all I really wanted to do was be at home writing and working. So I was sort of like, God, it would really suck if you've been about to release an album now. Luckily, I've been on tour, and by the time I'm releasing my album, everything will be back to normal.
Right. Whatever that is.
Yeah. So
it played right into your hand.
Yeah, there was still, I had a lot of hope making the record, I guess. You know, and I think but also there was a great sort of relief in that I didn't feel like I had to make anything that was market driven or that I would be able to tour easily. It was sort of like, you know, everyone's out of work. You know, let's get the orchestra involved, because when are you ever going to get a cheap orchestra,
right?
To, you know, play on your record. You know, so everything was a bit opportunistic in that way as well. Disaster economics.
Gotcha. Yeah. All righty. So, with the record coming out September 10th, do you have is there a plan? Is it possible to have a plan what you're going to do after that with the way things are?
I don't know. I mean, I've been talking to friends in America and like about doing shows and touring, but the Australian government's like we're still not allowed to leave. We have to apply to the government to leave the country.
Really?
Apparently, we're the only country besides North Korea.
North Korea.
The borders are closed. Like you can't leave. People can't come in.
Crazy.
Because from New Zealand, you can leave.
Yeah, you just can't get back in. That's
but at least you're allowed to leave.
Yep, that's true.
Yes, I don't know. I mean, I'm just hoping the record gets out there. You know, I just got a message today. It's one of the songs is charting at number 2 in Lithuania.
Well, there you go. You can't beat that. Was it Christmas in Rehab?
Yeah, Christmas in Rehab, number 2 in Lithuania. Elton John's number 1.
Well, there you go. I love it.
But yeah, I don't know. I'll probably just try and do some small scale kind of concerts and film them, and maybe come back to New Zealand. I mean, I'd love New Zealand.
We're trying to get that bubble open again. It's on and off, man. What a mess.
Yeah, well, Kirin got over there in the bubble.
Yep.
And was smart, and he was like, "I'm not coming back because Australia's totally shut down," and he knew. Yep.
Hopefully we'll be back out going to gigs again here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
probably run into them again, I bet.
Because it's weird when, like, it wasn't that long ago. We played a couple of shows,
right? And
you know, it was okay. Everything was fine there for a couple of months, and now it's really hard when you're in it for, you know, it's been 2 months or so now. It's hard to imagine it opening up. Like, like I'm going to get on a plane and fly to Melbourne. That sounds crazy. But, so I don't know. I hope, you know, directing people to the music, and I hope people like the album.
Yep.
What else are you going to do?
Well, thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for talking to me, Marty.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hopefully we'll see you over here sometime soon.
Yeah, get down to Whammy Bar.
There you go. Excellent.
All right. See you, man.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.